If one does have to take a hit, it'll be the communications and network security. Not saying that it does, but that's why I'm going to put that one off until the tail end of today. So let's go ahead and jump right in and start to see what you know about this awesome domain here. So there's a lot of great things that that's okay. But you definitely need to know, just like we mentioned earlier on in the week about asset security and information in general, that there is a life cycle. And typically we call that the Sdlc, right? The Sdlc is going to be the system developed. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen. Sorry about that. It went to sleep on me, huh? Oh, there we go. That tells you how long I've been talking for here. If it went to sleep, it means it's significant there. Thank you. All right. So there are different controls that we need to go ahead and discuss, as well as how the security is oftentimes an afterthought whenever we're talking about projects in general, and a COTS product here, what's going to be the potential impact of that within your organization? So there are some challenges with implementing software, and really it starts with this. This is a diagram from the book, so you may, if you're perusing through the book, you may end up seeing this, but this is typically the way the software works. Yeah. Well, I'm just falling apart here, guys. Not sharing my screen, not bringing it up on the screen behind me. Gosh, man, what kind of show you running here, guy? Sorry about that. But this is the usual trend with dealing with software, all right? But more importantly, look at this keyword here, buggy software. And any type of software that comes to the market, there's going to be bugs with it. There's going to be bugs with it. It's released to the market to beat the competition, which is, then you guessed it, it's out on the internet. So people, typically these bad guys, they will find issues with it, and just because they may not have any personal vendetta against you, it's just because they can and they have time, they're going to find issues with it. And they may or may not tell you that they found issues with it. So what they usually, these attackers, and so they'll publish these vulnerabilities out to some sort of hacker look at me kind of website, and there are plenty of them out there. Then maybe 2-3 months down the road, whoever released the software identifies that, hey, there is a problem, whether whoever you sold it to tells you that, or somehow, some way you're able to find it on the internet or find it yourself. Create the break fix or the patch for that, and the patch goes on to what needs to be released. And this whole thing is just a never-ending story, right? This is a never-ending story with software. And typically, like you may know, based off of your experience, typically, Microsoft joke that they have patch Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, Microsoft publishes, patches for various software that's out there. So a separate certification, and just more of a tidbit here, the CEH and EC Council actually says that the average zero, which is if it's a 0-day exploit, that means that it's new and somebody discovered it. The average 0 day, before somebody discovers the 0 day, on average, is in the wild for at least 72 days in the wild. So if you think about that, right, that somebody finds an O day, average roughly around 72 days. If you think about that with what we just talked about here, the cyclic approach, now it becomes what level of vulnerability is it? Is it a P1? Is it a P2? Is it a P3? A priority 1, priority 2, priority 3? Is it a blatant foul? Is it a gaping hole? Or is it and that's a determination for whoever the vendor is that sold the software. But if you just think about how this process works, typically, like what we just showed here, if it takes you another 2 weeks, so 14 days to build the solution, and then another 14 days to test the solution, and then another 7 days to schedule and at 35 plus days here, that by the time that the patch is released, we're looking at over 100 days for these patches to come to life and be put into a production environment. So the question is, if your machine was vulnerable, what were you doing 100 days ago? Like, what have you done in the last 100 days on your machine that may have a gaping hole? Microsoft usually, I got excited talking about Gator football. That's right, I did. Thank you. Usually Microsoft does that every Tuesday, and these are typically tied back to the CVEs. And I think I brought this up earlier on in the week, but I'll bring it up again here. These CVEs usually come in, whether or not they have a fix on them is something that MITRE will publish. And if you've never gone out to the CVE list, you can go out here and check it out. You can actually download these common vulnerability and exposures. You can download all the CVEs. You can you can actually submit these CVEs as well, if that's something. But they do exist, and they are out there. And this is part of what's called the NVD, the National Vulnerability Database. And these are publicly known cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So if it's a 0 day, that means that it's not known until somebody finds it, right? So it's out in the wild. And for attackers, the longer a 0 day exploit can be out there, now all of these devices that have that blatant foul in it, they can exploit. And so there are other websites out there, like if you're not familiar with something like Shodan, you can actually go out and look at all the Internet of Things out here on Shodan to see the internet connected devices, just any vulnerabilities that are out there. But more importantly, they don't have any type of security mechanisms on them. So Shodan publishes all those to the internet, and you can go out and explore things all around the world. It's quite interesting if you've never done this before, to go and look, because there's quite a bit of video cameras that are webcams. So there's webcams that are all over the world that are not secured, that are in places that these guys put on their website and publish it. And if we're going in and doing an assessment on a place around the country, one of the things that we'll do is, as we're gathering intelligence on that target, we'll come out here to websites like Shodan and see if, and most of the time we can't. So it's quite interesting to see what you can and can't find. So you may want to go out and just take a look at that. Who knows what you get yourself into there. And there is a ton of them. But I'm not going to get sidetracked on that because it is kind of neat. So, we talked earlier in the week, and this is where it all kind of comes into play, is with what kind of development methodologies are you using? Are you using maturity models, right? We talked about common criteria earlier on in the week. We talked about the CMMI. So those are different things that we do. But when it comes to software, one of the things that runs true is, right? What's the quality of the software? How good or bad is that software? And does it actually do what it's supposed to do? Functionality typically is first. And as we get into this, we start to understand how a lot of this works. But from an operational view, from a DODAF, the Architectural Framework for the Department of Defense, usually OV perspective, like an OV1, operational view 1. From a 10,000-foot view, we kind of go up in a SpaceX rocket and kind of just hover up top, a 10,000-foot view with an operational view. How are you, for your projects that you're working on, doing these sorts of things? What kind of development methodologies are you using? Is it one of my favorite, is it a Scrum? Where you're getting together every day and talking about what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? What obstacles did you have? In the life cycle, what kind of cranks your tractor? Where within that life cycle, turns you on? What gets you excited about going into work? Is it operation and maintenance mode? Working on projects that are in production with operation and maintenance mode? Or do you like going back and working at things that require a little bit more curiosity and innovation, creativity? Are you, when I say the words change management, is that something that you enjoy? Handling change requests? Or maybe even, tickets? Like trouble tickets? Do you enjoy doing configuration management? Configuration management? Those are all things within the change management process that are super important, especially, when I had a mentor of mine early on in my career that said, what separates a good engineer from an expert or a SME engineer is how good their documentation is. And, I take great pride at my command of the English language and being able to document an integrated product. Documentation is key. If we can't be able to have other people take over and utilize our software, our systems, whatever we're going through. So with this particular domain, what I like to do typically is I like to go ahead and bring up this right here. And this is kind of neat if you've never seen it before. We'll go ahead and make sure that you understand it, because it's really any type of software or a system, any type of system that we're creating, could even be a project or a product, for anything. It starts with an idea. And that idea kind of festers. Think about it. And, it really doesn't actually become something tangible until we take out a napkin or a note card or a piece of paper and actually take that idea and draw it. Right? For me, I wish I could steal the trademark from SAIC, bring science to solutions. And really, I think that's it doesn't even have to be cybersecurity related. If you have an idea, if it's just in your head, then that's intangible. But if you can matriculate and put it down on paper and draw a schema for it, then now that's something tangible that you can socialize that concept. So you can draw it, and then after that, the question then becomes for you is, can I build a prototype? Can't build it, then I got to go out and pay somebody to build it for me. And then now they know about that idea, so I'm taking a risk with that. So one of the really cool things that we like to screw around with here are microcontrollers. I got a few back there as well. And to actually make things. So if you can build it, if you build it, they will come. Well, check this out right here. This is just a little Raspberry Pi that has on the front side, it's a touch screen or touch panel. And the cool thing with these Raspberry Pis is not only do they run Linux, you can run Linux on it, but it's got a wireless Ethernet card or a wireless component radio on it. It's got an Ethernet. Also has different pins here that we can plug peripherals into. And so, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever the Raspberry Pi came to life, a lot of people that were afraid of hardware to actually go out and buy different pieces of hardware and program the field programmable gate arrays like an FPGA or something like that. Really, when the software world with now the hardware world. And these add-ons we just have for this one, and I'm not going to get into it, but for this one, there's just 2 pins that you connect here. You probably can't see it online, but there's just 2 little cables here that you connect to the first 2 pins that brings this touch screen to life. So now, with this little tiny microcontroller, I can put a web server on here, an Apache web server, and I can put MySQL database, I can put PHP on here, and it maybe goes on a door. Or if I can get power from my car, and I can put it, in my car. Or if I wanted to, just make anything, now I have a conduit that allows me to do that. And why is that important? Well, if you can't build a prototype, then you got to go out and pay somebody. But you also take a risk at giving away the idea and not keeping it secret anymore. So after the prototype is developed, we can kind of remember the other day when we started talking about the common criteria, I said it's bubble gum and duct tape with the EAL level. Well, if we're building a prototype, we know it's a prototype. It may look super sexy, especially when we're demoing it, but I know if I'm the guy that's demoing it, that I'm not going to push on this button over here. I'm not going to push on that button over there. Demonstration that I'm doing for you, and it's a happy path, right? If somebody asks, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? We can do all of that, but here is what I have hard-coded for my demonstration. And the reason why I say that is, you build a prototype, and then you start to go out and hopefully, you get some money for it. You get somebody to pay you to start developing it. Or maybe you can integrate your idea into a project. But either way you cut the tomato here, it begins typically with these gates. And in the federal government or in private industry, we usually refer to them as gates. It starts off with a first gate of what's typically called a PDR. And that is a preliminary design review, PDR. And in this PDR, what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically flesh out any requirements that the customer may have. So we had the idea, we were able to bring the idea to life, like GE, right? We bring good things to life. It's got bubble gum and duct tape sticking it together right now. Let's go ahead and get some requirements. So we get the requirements down, and I come back to an informal review with you to make sure that we have everything that we need. And usually what I say, this is usually what I say here, is we can give you the Pinto, we can give you the Mustang, we can give you the Cadillac, right? So, and let's just be clear here. So you got the low of the Geo Metro. Yeah, not the Pinto. Okay. Yeah, so we got the low cost one, but it would work. We got the one with the gas pedal. Looks sexy as well, but it's a little bit more money. And then we got the built-in DVD into the headrest. We got the wood grain panels, the nice chrome, a little bit of how do we say it? A little bit of bling bling for that one. And usually what ends up happening as we come into this PDR is that the customer says, hey, I really like the idea of the Pinto. When you were showing me the Mustang, I liked, that option A that you had on the Mustang. And hey, you know what? That thing, the Cadillac, that's a nice to have. We'd love to have that one piece that you said that you could put in there as well. And as a coalescence, if you will, usually you'll end up probably and then half of the last money sign. So somewhere between a Mustang and a Cadillac. So you get approval for this PDR. Decomposing requirements here. So that's the decomposition of requirements decomposition. So you'll start to talk about system level requirements, functional requirements, interface requirements, all sorts of different types of buckets of requirements, functionality, but we're not coding yet. To flesh out the requirements. And then we get to this next one, which is called the CDR. CDR is typically the critical design review. And at the CDR, we come back and we say, okay, based off of the stuff that we had in the PDR, you told us that you wanted this, that, and the other thing. We went through, we've been meeting with you every day to talk about these. We've decomposed the requirements. We got 158 different requirements that we've been able to put together now. And we feel like we're ready to go. We feel like we're ready to go. And basically you tell the customer, this is the way that we're going. Customer says, all right, you got the green light, go ahead. So now what we end up doing after the gate of the CDR or assembling or integrating. And why would we not want to begin coding before this point right here? Why would we not want to? Put it in the chat window for me. Why would we not want to begin coding prior to this? That's right, Amos. Good. Yep. Don't have much code. Yeah, you gotta know what the code. But I think the tantamount thing here is that if I begin coding back at the PDR and I don't have all the requirements that the customer wants, usually that means I'm going to do a bunch of rework. And time is money, so we don't want that. So we wait to have the approval, the check off, the sign off, if you will. And then we get to the next gate, the TRR, the Test Readiness Review. And in the Test Readiness Review, this is kind of neat if you've never seen this before. Usually you'll have inside of here a non-interested third party do what's called an FQT. And the FQT, you may be familiar with it, is a formal qualification test, right? And if you have that FQT, basically all the requirements get put into that FQT, and that FQT now, this formal qualification test, basically would tie back to the verification and the validation that you're providing what they asked for, but is it accomplishing the goals and is it what they wanted to moving forward? And because of that, usually that is a gate right there. The test readiness review is done. Now we've passed the FQT here. That has the Haynes underwear stamp of, or Fruit of the Loom underwear stamp of approval on it and said, yep, that's it. And you keep marching here, keep marching, till finally now we're ready for what's called the ORR. ORR, and that is the Operational Readiness You guessed it, review. And this very formal, right? This is a formal check off or check out. Really, it's a formal blessing. That's typically the way that I'll describe it. And the ORR will typically require whoever's the program manager, the project manager, or the lead engineer, whoever that is, to go to each individual that they've done their due diligence, talking to each individual department. Like, for instance, hey, test people that did the FQT, everything looked good for you. Test person is in that ORR. You have them verbally says, yes, we went through 158 tests. We found no bugs. We're good to go. Okay, thank you, test person. Help desk. Do you have your our due diligence with the help desk. You know that it's coming. We're releasing it tomorrow. Help desk, spits it out and says, yes, we've met with our team. We're ready to go. We feel confident about it. All right. What about this department over there, that department over there? Who's going to be actually pushing the code into production, like an application access admin group or something like that? So you have a functional checkout with each of these. Now, just from experience, what a little trick that I've learned to make sure that you're successful with that, prior to the ORR, you want to go meet face to face with each one of these people, because really you want to educate them on what that ORR is going to do and instruct them, but not put words in their mouth. Instruct them that, hey, during this review, because these customers over here that are paying for our salaries, if you say too much information, then we may not be able to make it through this ORR. And so usually it's scripted. Did you or did you not test this stuff out? Did you or did you not, or are you aware of the documentation? Are we ready in change management? And so you kind of grease the skids with each of these leads from each one of these teams. Because really, it's the coming out party, if you will, for your software. It's the coming to life, or the system, or the product. And really, once everything is approved here in this formal checkout by the customer, now we reach what's called the O&M phase. And that is the operational and maintenance. Okay, O&M phase. And then that means that we are live and in what's called a production environment. So we're in the production environment. So one thing that I deliberately left out here, in this life cycle is first time that I'm talking about, right? Because what studies have shown is that security usually is an afterthought. Usually people start thinking about security somewhere right before the test readiness review. And studies have shown that if you bolt on, that's my bolt, if you bolt on security, that studies have shown that it's 10 times more costly to bolt on a security solution at the end of a project. And so what do? Well, that's one of the things that, at least in the DoD side of the house, and dare I use the word beautiful for the RMF process, right? Or to push security to the left. Of the project. So then, if we hire on one of you guys that are on the horn right now, if we hire you on, down here after the project's funded, we get to a PDR. Now, every week we're meeting, talking about security. You put together, every week we're talking about what security implementations or implications do we have. And it becomes embedded inside of our project because we have somebody who is thinking about security, or as we like to say, practicing security. Just like a doctor practices or an attorney practices, we're practicing security. Embed it into the project. And by doing that, not only do we save money, but we also save time. We save time. I was working on a project. I came in. They brought me in. They were getting close to the TRR on this particular project, and I came in, and I think that they brought me in on purpose to kind of call their baby ugly. But when I came in there, I started asking questions, and any software assurance scans run on the software. And up until that point, there were nobody had thought about running a static code analyzer or dynamic code analyzer or doing any testing on the actual software for this system. And because of that, we kind of had to put other things on hold while we did that. And they turned out 100 violations, Cat 1 and Cat 2 violations for software assurance based off of the scans, and those are all showstoppers. Every one of those need to be addressed. So, the little gap here of functionality that was left in the development of the system had to be put on hold as a lot of their team went and focused on those 1,500 issues that need. At the end, cost more time, cost more money. As we push it to the left, that's what we're looking to do. So fundamentally, the question is, where do you belong? Because we talk about this 10 miles wide and an inch deep, with the CISSP, but in this life cycle here, usually, for me, this is just me, usually I help projects. I'll come on usually either somewhere right around here with the PDR and then help bring it in to right about here, 3 to 6 months. 3 to 6 months after it's been in production. And then personally in my career, because I found out a long time ago that I don't want to be answering change requests or trouble tickets. So I can help develop the product. I can help get it past the testing. I can help put it into production. But then I'm going to transition it off to somebody usually at a lower wage that can help with the operation and maintenance of that software. And really it comes down to where do you belong, because there's a butt for every seat here, right? For each, tons of opportunity to get in. If you like the innovation and creativity components down, closer to the left here, then there's some great things to be done. You don't necessarily need to just be a coder to add value to a project right here, or anywhere to the right of that PDR. I mean, there's tremendous opportunity for you as an engineer to practice security. And keep that in mind as you're going out and taking on either your job currently or the next job that you may have. Any questions on that? So here's a little funny. Check it out. The typical software development project. This is kind of funny, and I've seen some of these before. So let's check it out. This is how the customer explained it. Right here. This is how they explained it. This is how the project leader understood it. Right. So that's that. That's that. This is how the analyst designed it. They cut out the middle of the tree, right? And then they jerry-rigged it over here on both sides. I mean, whatever, right? This is how the consultant sold it or described it. It's a holy chair here that's going to be totally awesome, right? This is how it was documented. How true is that? Right? True. This is what Operation installed. Just they were only able to install a rope. This is what the customer was billed for, right? This is how it was supported. Yep. No, it wasn't supported at all. And this is what the customer really needed. Just a tire swing, right? They got billed for a roller coaster. This is, you polish the turd right here, right? You put a little lipstick on the pig here from the business consultant. But yeah, this is what they needed right here. And what we see, that's typically what we see. And it's kind of funny that, this one comic strip here kind of describes it that way, because yeah, I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can go in and actually develop software. A bunch of different methodologies that we can utilize, and a few of them screen right now. And you may have used these in the past. But what we can definitely agree on in our methodology here, whether or not we'd agree on one of these methods, it being the best or not, I don't care. But we definitely need to have requirement right up front, to have some sort of design. Then it's got to go through some sort of development with definitely a testing and validation phase. And then finally, we'll release it in the wild and then maintain it. Are typically what we see, and the way that we manage the project is directly related to that. We definitely want to have some sort of up front, some sort of statement of work, right? Or SOW, S-O-W. We probably make sure that we don't have scope creep. We talked about that before. But in the chat, go ahead and tell me what you think that is in the chat window there.
When you're
so uncontrollable project that continually right, that's what we were kind of thinking of, and I think I played this for you guys yesterday, didn't I? I just kind of like it, Yeah, you're a creep. All of us are in our own little special way. But with the scope creep, usually that ends up costing you a ton of money, and we don't want that, right? So we try to avoid that by hammering out the requirements, work breakdown structure. And I've seen, a bunch of different implementations of this, but a lot of times people will put in different change requests for each work breakdown structure, and then there'll be a rough order of magnitude or a ROM that's associated with each of those changes to ensure that we don't have that scope creep. Going in and making sure that we consider any type of security risks that are there, any type of privacy risk. Those are all very important for us to make sure that we give the customer what they want. And from that, you could actually begin to have these methodologies integrated into your project. Hopefully, you're going to be able to agree upon one of them. A lot of times we see the waterfall model, which you may or may not be familiar with here. And let me just bring up a picture here, the waterfall model. So in your book, the waterfall model looks like this right here. Going into analysis, going into design, going into implementation, then testing and maintenance. And it kind of looks like a waterfall, right? For each one of these. That would be similar to how your project is led. This also tightly couples a Gantt chart right here for project management. Right, so the waterfall. Be more familiar with, or maybe you're not familiar, but you may be familiar with this right here again from your book, the spiral methodology, where it starts off determining objectives, identifying risks, developing and testing, but essentially requirements in the middle here, right? And it just kind of continues to hopefully not spiral out of control. But this is between these different methodologies that people use, and you may or may not be familiar with some of them. I would encourage you to take a look at them and see if they make sense, because they may not, and so you just need to go and look at it. Another one here is this rapid application development, or RAD, where this again is in design, detailed design, construction, testing, implementation. That's typically or traditionally the way that that we see it. Well, instead, for rapid application development, usually people will build, they'll demo, and then refine. And then this is where you live most of the time, in a prototype. Then you throw the prototype out to test it, more integration or bug fixes, and then you throw it out for testing. And then once it pushes past the testing, you pop it into production. And this is one that's very valuable, especially in the commercial world. We see a lot of rapid application development, as well as this next one here, the 2 down here, agile development, or Scrum. Similar, where basically it's kind of like the concept from rugby, where you get together every day in a huddle, and you have a daily tag up. And I actually like this, because you have a daily tag up, and during the daily tag up, you have to say, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And did you have any obstacles? And this one right here, especially in the software world, this one forces introverts to come out of their shell for at least 2 minutes a day. Around, and it's kind of awkward. It's kind of awkward because they don't feel comfortable talking in front of people. But what it does is immediately, we implemented this for a customer probably about 8 years ago when I was helping out with something. And one of the guys, I think, hit the nail on the head. He says that, when we first implemented it, he said, I shouldn't need to tell you what I'm doing today, what I'm doing yesterday, and if I had any obstacles. And that was the wrong thing to say. So that type of attitude usually comes to surface very quickly in these types of projects. And usually, I kind of liken it when you come in there and implement something like this, that, if somebody was used to reporting every to their dark cave and getting pizza slid under the door and then checking in every 90 days. If you come down to, hey, now we're doing this a little bit differently, every 15 days, you got to show a demo. What do you work on? And then the 16th day, we plan the next one. And then now you have 15 days. And then on the 16th day, we plan the next one. And so this is very fruitful, tangible demonstration. But usually, heaven forbid that we hold people accountable for each hour that they're building or that they're billing, because this accountability here is what typically is the biggest pushback from people that are not used to it. And I kind of liken this to, or any type of boxing, if you will. If you get, in Mike Tyson's Punch Out, you get hit, it would always show the person kind of going backwards. But then after about 2 or 3 weeks of doing it, you kind of absorb the punch. You get rid of those people that don't want to be doing it, because this is the way that we're doing it. And that's unfortunate that they got to go find somewhere else to work. But if this is what you're doing here, if this is the way you're doing it, somewhere else to make a paycheck. And that's usually what we see is with some of these that people aren't used to. If they're not used to reporting every day, like in a waterfall or a spiral, and that DoD project that I was talking about that was in trouble, that the customer said that I'm thinking about pulling the funding from it, this is the only way that could have that corrective action, where each day you're reporting back to the customer saying, this is what, and here are the obstacles that we have. The obstacles are what the customer will rectify. So that's the only thing that the customer rectifies right there. Otherwise, they're just a fly on the wall. And it's kind of nice, And these typically are called sprints. Those 15-day increments, they're called sprints. Some people call them wind sprints. Other words for them. You guys ever done that? Anybody ever done that before? Yeah. And we've been seeing that a lot. We've been seeing that a lot. People moving from, more traditional, where it's, you to now every 15 days, the customer wants to see a demo. We're seeing that much, much more come to life. And interestingly enough, Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, they all use the Scrum methodology. So, out of these right here, unfortunately for you, you gotta kind of go and learn about each one of them. You're gonna probably have one question will be on your exam for that. You'll probably have one question on the CMMI process here. All right, and the capability maturity model. And this is the way that it typically will work here, is if you're a level 1, then it's just unpredictable, poorly controlled, and reactive. Right, so level 1, you might as well not even say you're a level 1. Lift up the hood, your baby's ugly, boom, they're going to give you a CMMI level 1. So you hopefully don't get a CMMI level 1. 2 is starting to get okay. You have repeatable processes. So some things that you have are repeatable. 3 typically is acceptable. So, if you're bidding on a project and you have at least the 3, then you have change management. You have it's organized. You're trying to proactively go and fix things, but really it's defined, right? Next would be managed, and here's this key word here: the quantitative. So measured and control. You're actually not only managing projects, but you're measuring. And then level 5 is usually pretty costly, but you continuously try to improve. And this is kind of interesting because these words right here go into a lot of things, right? You think about RMF, the risk management framework, they talk about continuously monitoring. MMC, continuously practicing good cyber hygiene. Same with DFARS, right? They want to make sure that people are always trying to improve upon it. But that's what this is process improvement. You try to just get better and better and better. I have been on 2 projects that I've supported for multiple years that one of the projects was a level 3. One of the projects got to level, and then they went back down to level 3. So usually level 3 is acceptable. It's very difficult to stay up here. I personally have never seen or heard of anybody having a level 5 CMMI project, personally. Now, I've had people come through class and say that, especially with some of the bigger shops that are out there, that typically with each one of these, oh gosh, I don't know how to say it. I'm trying to think of a different way to say it. With each one of these, as you move up the food chain, you start getting too many chiefs, enough Indians. That's the way I'm saying it. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. So usually as you go up here, you got people asking you, where's that TPS report? Hey, did you do that TPS? I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday to get me that report. If you've never seen the movie The Office, then you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But that's really what we see, is that as you move up the food chain here, and you got a lot of hands in the cookie jar. A lot of hands in the cookie jar. But that's really what you're trying to do, is constantly improve, constantly try to make the project mo better. All right, so in your book, again, I'm just going to reiterate here. they have these little blowout blocks where, you know, if you go in and are taking a look at it and you don't want to go and read 67 things about this book are these blowout boxes that they have where basically they just give you the straight dope on each one of those things that we just talked about. So if you want to go in and take a look at those blowout boxes, I would recommend that you do that, because there's definitely a lot of goodness there with that. Anybody have any questions here? What time we got? A bit over. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a lunch break here. And then when we come back, what I'm going to do is I want to talk and make sure that we're all on the same page about verification and validation. We'll make sure that we discuss that. I want to also make sure that said that you had the Security Plus, but I definitely want to spend a little bit of time on databases and talking about fun with databases. I want to talk a little bit about testing, and then circle the wagon with some different data models that are used in the wild, like COM and DCOM. We can talk about that. So there's at least 4 or 5 more topics that I want to go through. Talk a little bit about change control as well in the software development security. We also have the security operations that I want to jump into, and then the communications and network security. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take a 45-minute break for lunch, 45-minute break. And I think it's around 45 after. And I just noticed this morning that is still an hour. Come on back at 12:30, and we'll knock the rest of this domain out. We'll jump into operations security, and then we'll get into the final one, communication and network security. So come on back in 45 minutes. We'll see you then. Yeah. Oh.